Okay, hello everyone. This is the first video in the series of basically 6 max cash. There's going to be about 22 videos if I do them all. So today I'm just going to do some open sizes, well, opens and why we open, kind of the history of opening and like what to do when the action was first on you and why it's a thing and why we play the way we do now. So this is just some arbitrary hand, just to show the table obviously. So if you just imagine a scenario where there's no blinds and there's 6 players at the table and actions on this player here, for example, and there's nothing to gain, like there's no pot, the pot is 0, there's nothing to gain from playing a hand. As soon as this guy v-pips any hand which isn't aces, the players behind can play an unexploitable strategy of just moving all in with aces, and this guy's just automatically going to lose however much he puts in, say $2 or whatever. Like he can never call with a better hand, he can only ever limp aces and then get a chop. He's just automatically lost. It's an unexploitable strategy this guy can play. And then as soon as the blinds are entered into the game, forcing these 2 players to put money in with 100% of all possible hands, then there's suddenly incentive to play. So like before there was 0 risk and some dollar reward if this guy v-pipped any hand other than aces. I mean, there's risk in the sense that when you get called and you have aces, you are going to lose some percent of the time, but in general you're just printing like EV. So yeah, the blinds are what force us to at least play poker, you have to, I mean, you don't have to play these positions, but obviously being forced to play the small blind and the big blind with weak ranges is it's going to cost you money. So then you kind of get into the realms of like, how often do we want to open or like play these hands, and why do we raise, why do we not limp? So let me just check my notes. So the pros of limping possibly are you can get him for cheaper if you want to play wider ranges, and when you limp fold you lose less, whereas when you 2x or 3x and you're going to fold to a re-raise, you lose more. You could also employ a limp re-raising strat, which would keep your range uncapped. However, if you limp one of these positions, the big blind can just check 100% of all hands, and then he'll take some free roll equity, as it were, and he can overtake your aces, for example. Whereas when you raise, you are forcing him to put in more money when he's behind. So yeah, that's obviously a con. And if you limp or make it very small pre-flop, you allow more set mining and speculative hands to come along, like deuces through to 5s, 5-6 suited, to try and outdraw you. It will also induce more multi-way pots, in theory and in practice. Like the small blind might come in for $1 with a hand like King 5 suited if it's limped around. The perception is that limped ranges are typically capped and the hands are a bit more face up. So if you're doing a mixed strategy of limping some of the time and opening some of the time, and you're not balancing correctly, then people might be able to correctly play against your range by attacking the weak parts of your range. Then again, you could always limp everything, so that's where the limp re-raising comes in and stuff like that. But generally it's easier just to do one thing in every position, just do everything with 100% of your playing hands, just raise everything or whatever. So yeah, the multi-way pots thing is like a pro and a con. This kind of applies to also like when you raise 2x or very small sizes, play more multi-way hands. If you want to play multi-way, if you think the guys are particularly bad on your table, you think they like to v-pip very bad hands like Queen 10 offsuit and stuff, then you can suck them in if you know they're never going to fold, like a top pair type hand. then making 2 pairs with those kind of 2 pairs are a set with these speculative hands can be profitable. But in like the modern tough game of like Zoom, then it's not really a viable strategy or a winning strategy. And yeah, another con for like limping pre is you'll end up playing a small pot with really big hole cards, which the stack to pot ratio will be very large, and then really with aces you want to reduce the SPR as much as possible, as fast as possible, just to reduce the ability the other players have to outplay you. So yeah, the benefits of raising are that you can win the pot uncontested. If the big blind isn't going to, if he's a nitty player, which a lot of players are, especially at lower stakes, I don't see too much overfolding at like 100 zoom and 200 zoom, but definitely lower. Like some people will they won't play any hands. Like, I'll just get this up. Like they might just never play a hand outside of a range of like, they might see some pretty suited aces and play them, but they might always stay away from, say, king queen off, ace jack off. They might just like probably set mine. Most of these people like to set mine at low stakes, but if they're just playing like a million tables like I do, but they play quite tight, then they might just kind of play hands like this. And V-pipping 13% out of 100% is obviously a tiny percent. Like, they might just not be willing to play kind of hands in this kind of region, which can add like a massive percent of hands. So we're up to 23 when we were on, so we nearly doubled it straight away. So yeah, if they're autopiloting, it can be a good idea to raise and attack and try and take their blinds if they're overfolding. That's a benefit. One con is that you do lose more when you get re-raised pre, so this kind of ties into how big you want to make your sizing. So kind of, I think 2.5x is kind of the standard right now. In my games, 200 zoom, 100 zoom kind of level. I've been doing some 2xing for a lot of time, but I think I might stay away from that, especially in these two positions, because I think it's just way too small, and like you can induce these two ranges, because you're voluntarily raising. These are going to be the best hands in the deck or in the whole card like spectrum. So it makes sense that maybe a sizing of like 3 or 3.5x might be good for these positions, and these positions where you're trying to abuse being in position, you want to be wider maybe. This would be more suitable to like a 2x strat. Normally I just do the same raise size for all 4 positions here, but maybe I'll mix it up in future, we'll see. So yeah, the benefit, another benefit for raising pre-flop is that you increase the size of the pot before the flop with your stronghold cards, and then there's obviously an exponential behavior for the pot size. So the more you get in, like before the flop or just at any street, when you bet a percentage of the pot rather than absolute number of big blinds, it starts like a snowball effect, and the pot gets exponentially bigger per street of betting. So that's good for when you have strong hold cards. So we've talked a bit about sizings. So 2x is obviously the smallest available. This is good because it's gives you a very efficient bluff. You're risking a very small amount to win, 75% of the amount you put in. If you put in 4, you're going to come back with 3 if it gets through. So against nitty players who they're just going to play the same range regardless of the size, like the tight player we mentioned earlier, if he's going to play the same range to a $4 open than a $6 open, then opening $4 with a wider range is more beneficial. If he's going to, and if we want to remain balanced, then we'll just stick to that sizing. Whereas if the guy is just never going to fold his big blind, which kind of a player like me might do, if I've got like king 8 suited and we're in late position, king 8 suited is probably an easy defend, but kind of this kind of hand values, maybe even lower, to be honest. I'm still going to defend versus a 3x, getting 2-1 or whatever it would be, slightly better than 2-1. Like, yeah, hands like this. Maybe I wouldn't play these to a 3x, but definitely against a 2x I would. Which might, this guy might be happy to do that, but in general, I'm not going to get completely rolled over playing those kind of hands, even these kind of hands here. I might peel a flop, and then all you have to do is just try and make a pair and get to somewhat showdown, and you've defended quite well, and probably going to maybe not make a profit, but you're definitely going to lose less than minus 100 BB per 100 hands, which is the expectation you have to beat for folding. Like folding pre is minus 100 BB 100, and then you just want to beat that expectation. But this is kind of do with blind defense, but so I'll try and get it back to opens. So yeah, versus loose players who are going to play wider, then maybe just pump up the sizing if you want to play like an exploitable strategy and just size up. So that's all of the notes I've got on my notepad file. I'll just check my handwritten one. So yeah, obviously, so that's kind of an exploitable approach. In terms of theory, by making a smaller sizings, the blinds are obviously meant to like call more. So you do get to play more pots in position as the opener. So if you feel like, like I said, I would defend very wide in the big blind, but if you feel like you've got a big edge on this player or this player, then making it smaller, and if they do adjust according to theory, they call wider, then you get to play more pots in position, and you might be able to outplay them harder. Yep, so raising, bigger gets more fold in terms of a percent, but it's less efficient bluffing wise. 2x arguably pointless if the big blind always defends correctly. That's kind of true, but kind of not true. So yeah, and in historically, I think 4xing or 3.5xing used to be a thing. It's not really the meta game right now, but there are players who still, like at the very small micros, like 10 and 0 and lower. I've seen people who are very nitty players and they just like juice it to like 4x because all they're doing is waiting to stack like a fish. It's just going to call with like a bad hand, and then they just like go pot pot pot. So yeah, it's mainly a strategy at the tiniest stakes. Then there's also one guy at 500 zoom I remember from last year who was also 4xing all positions, but I don't really see it at 200 zoom / 100 zoom. And then my housemate says that he's seen a guy who like only ever limps or 4x's. So if it's some weird balanced play, then fair enough. But it would be much harder to balance. So yeah, just a quick note on also frequency of opens. Like, what's a good way of deciding what kind of frequencies you might want to open? These are just the notes. So yeah, this was something I just kind of drew up. So one, like, in quotes, GTO bot out there right now is Poker Snowy. Poker Snowy basically opens in the first two positions. It prefers half pot sizes for these positions. Small blind, it has like a mixed strategy of like limping and raising. Obviously it has strategies to do every type, but I think it prefers either 3x or limping and limp raising. Yeah, it's quite a niche spot, the small blind, so I won't really dwell too much on it. But yeah, so it opens kind of like 17%. I think it opens like 18% in the, I think it's like 16 and a half, maybe 17 and a half, 25 here. And it does go significantly wider here, maybe like, I think it goes to like 44, maybe 42. It's kind of tight on the button. You'd think it'd be wider, but training against itself, it found that opening tight was fine or correct. Then these are just some like coefficients I randomly put in. So basically, as a fraction of players at the table, assuming there's no advantage for being in position or out of position, you might expect player 1 to win 1/6 of the pots in this position, and then when this player's folded, then this player might win 1/5. Then if you just times it by some arbitrary coefficient to represent in position or out of position advantage, So I did like 0.8, so you know he's going to be generally out of position the most. So this came out with 13%. Going to be out of position at some more often than not. So decrease the open size maybe to 18%. Then going to be in position more often than not because the blinds are going to be defending wider because they're already partially invested. 27%. This is kind of like when Snowy opens for pot, it does advocate for like 13% range. MP would be about 18% as the same. 27%, I don't think Snowy goes this wide. I think it just sticks at 25. But in terms of games actually being played right now, people do open kind of 27. Kind of 25 is like more normal, but you know you can go up to like 27 and 28. And in PIOs, although I've never done any pre-flop solving in PIO, like a default range in the PIO folders does suggest a 28% range. So PIO, if that's based on what it solves, would suggest 28% is good here. Then the button, because you're always going to be in position, whether it's a single raise pot or a 3-bet pot, you know, comes out with a whopping 50%, which, you know, could be legit, which is obviously wider than Snowy, but this is just kind of my kind of take on it. But I'm not sure what PIO suggests, but I think it's going to be about 48%. And yeah, the small blind is interesting, so because you're always going to be out of position against the big blind, but you might expect to win 50%. I just chunked in quite a low coefficient, and it did came out at 35. And this is actually if you do a raise first in strategy of 35% for like a big sizing, like 3.5x, this is actually the frequency you want to go for. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Also, like when the blinds are set up such as this, it does imply that your minimum defense has to be about 35% of all hands, because the big blind is essentially risking 2 to win 1. And then let me just check that. The equation is just risk, which is 2 over risk plus reward, which is obviously 3. Yeah, so 33%. Sorry, 1 minus this number. So you're meant to defend 33% in the small blind. But obviously, because the ranges are so wide and so equal in strength, it's much better to VPIP a significantly higher number of hands in some manner. But just raising, you can't just raise like 60% because this guy can just 3-bet you relentlessly and can profit in that manner. So, so yeah, I think that's kind of everything I wanted to go over. Let me just check one more time. So yeah, just to recap the most important things, the blinds are what instigate opens. You want to play the strong hands from early position because you're mainly targeting these guys' ranges. Whenever these guys behind you voluntarily put in money, they're probably ahead of you. Well, that's the idea. But yeah, you get to dominate these guys and you want to target them. And yeah, these are the kind of frequencies played right now. The sizings, obviously we mentioned, are kind of like 2.5x, but you can open it other sizings if you so wish. And yeah, I think that's it. So the next video, I'll go over like cold calling in position when there's an open from like these positions, and then you just flat in position, what kind of hands you might want to flat. Oh yeah, maybe I should go over that. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but yeah, I mean, like suited aces perform very well. Having an ace blocker means you're going to get 3-bet less by 3-bet bluffs and also by 3-bet value. Aces and ace king being value, like kind of ace 5 suited might be a bluff, typical bluff hand. You also make the best flush available when you do get a flush. These hands can make straights and flushes. So yeah, let's just go for like the kind of 15% region. I think, no, it doesn't. Snowy doesn't open these kind of. Snowy opens a range which looks kind of like this, I believe. Yeah, this is probably what Snowy's kind of open range looks like, which I think is very good. Most people stick to kind of Snowy ranges, whether they've downloaded the program and seen it for themselves, but it's just a fact that most people kind of play this kind of range in under the gun and MP, then add in some of these here, then like trying to get to 25% in the cutoff kind of looks a bit like yeah, about that. So yeah, this is the kind of range I'm talking about for open raises. This will be the button, then small blind, you know, whatever, 35%. If you want to raise, and then like some kind of mixed strat, v-pipping, kind of this for limp calling, limp raising, limp folding. So yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to go over. Talked about Snowy's preferences, briefly touched on PIO, but for this specific section I don't have any PIO experience, just what's in the directory. So yeah, try and steal blinds, abuse nitty players, and yeah, we have to play wide ranges because yeah, the blinds have to v-pip 100% of hands. Okay, well, not voluntarily, but yeah. Alright, thanks for watching, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.